Hello, everyone, and welcome to this fireside chat. Our topic today is growing into a better leader, dealing with change. Our speaker today is Amit Sawant. Amit, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, Sophia. Hello, everyone. Really excited to be here. So, my name is Amit Sawant. I'm the Chief Product and Business Officer at Somatix. Somatix is a digital health tech startup where our mission is to improve patient lives in a cost-effective manner. And like we have built a AI-powered platform for remote patient monitoring that uses gesture-based detection on a wearable device. And based on that, we provide clinical insights to healthcare providers. Prior to that, I was the head of product management at Dell Technologies, where I drove the product and business strategy for their data protection products. I've also worked at other companies on the product side at NetApp, Riverbed, and TCS. So one thing that I'm very passionate about is building high-performing teams. And therefore, this topic is very dear to me, and I'm very excited to be here to talk about this. So, Sophia, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Amit. My name is Sophia Broomfield, and I've been a product management leader for over 25 years in the B2B enterprise space. I'm a trained coach, and I'm currently helping product managers grow in their leadership roles. So today we have the first 15, 20 minutes. I have a few questions that I would like to ask Amit. And then after, I'm going to open it up for Q&A. And so please start to put some of your Q&A questions into the box so that I can read from them. So starting off, Amit, let's talk about something that is on the minds of a lot of people, right? It's about COVID-19 and remote work.
Right.
So during this time, how as a leader have you kept the lines of communication open? How have you meaningfully engaged with your team? And how have you helped to keep the morale of your team high?
Yeah, sure. I think COVID has really sort of enabled us to come up with new means of communication, new modes of communication, and sort of make sure that you really connect with your team members, right? So during COVID times, sort of we had also at our company, I was at Dell at that time. So we started using Microsoft Teams quite effectively, and that's something that we kept using more and more, sort of having different channels, so that you can not only just have um, sort of bi-directional communication, but also asynchronous one-way communication, so that whereby somebody could just post their questions rather than going through emails or waiting for a meeting to be set up. Is there a way that we can just get some quick answers? And also, I've had a very global team. I had team members in the US, India, and China. So with COVID, I also wanted to make sure that the team really comes together. They really feel as one strong team and not necessarily feel disconnected. Just first of all because of the geographical boundaries, but also because of what COVID brings to the table, right? So using Microsoft Teams, then we also effectively used WhatsApp, WeChat, keeping all channels of communication open, but also at the time, also making sure that we are not overburdening ourselves. So it was like more of a, I guess, one-way communication from team members to me, just to make sure that I am accessible to my team members as and when they wanted some data from me or some sort of attention from me about certain things that they are working, right? So this is about the mode of communication. Then you asked about how did you effectively engage with the team members. So here, like as a team member, this is sort of a no-brainer that you absolutely need to have high emotional intelligence. So and also during these COVID times, if anything, you really need to sort of further dial that up if you can, right? Just to make sure that you really take care of your team members, make sure that their health and well-being is front and center to you, as a leader, making sure that they are in the right frame of mind. Because for anybody to work and perform at their best, they need to be in that uh, comfort zone, in that frame of mind. So how is it that you as a leader can provide it to them, right? So by having these open lines of communication, making sure that you address any of the questions, making sure that their family is doing well, they are feeling safe in addressing any of those questions that they may have. And I
Great. Thank
know sort of the other question, the follow-up question that you had is, how did you keep the morale high, right?
you.
Yeah, so the one thing that I also did quite diligently, we started off right before the pandemic, is having virtual social hours. Like, since given that my team was globally distributed, as I said, in US, India, and China, we made sure that we had these virtual social hours where we don't talk anything about work. It's purely about the person, what are their hobbies, their interests, and just make it a fun hour just to get to know each other a little bit better, apart from the day-to-day work activities. And in fact, I would say that if anything, during these COVID times, the team has really come together even more closer than before pre-pandemic days. So that's something that we did. During these virtual social hours, we used to have game nights, playing code names, some other sort of virtual games, and making sure that we really get to know each other a little bit better.
That sounds like so much fun. Okay,
Yeah.
so another question for you is around change in management. Typically, at technology companies, there are frequent changes from the top. How do you, as a leader, deal with change in management? How do you avoid your team members getting anxious or frustrated? And how do you address the question of what impact does it have on me?
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, that's more common than you would like to see in the technology environment. But sort of the one thing that I always try to make sure is to have transparent communication with my team members. So first, I make sure that I really understand all of the details in terms of the reasoning behind certain leadership changes. Sometimes um, new leadership comes in, whether it's the president, the SVP, or VP. So what, like the question that people always have in their mind is that, okay, so what does that mean to me? So how does that affect me? How does that affect my day-to-day work? Does it mean that I'm gonna, uh, should I be fearful about my job, or am I going to be moved into a different team? Am I going to have a new manager? So there are these multitude of questions that come in your head, right? So first, I try to gather as much information as I can from my leadership, just to make sure that I, as a leader, I understand what the rationale behind these changes are. It's easier said than done. At times, you may get that information passed down to you. At times, you may not. So sometimes you have to work with the entire set of information or some subset of the information. But I always make sure that whatever information I have, I transfer it transparently to my team members, so they understand where I, as a leader, stand and what they should take away from what my understanding is, so that they know what changes to expect. So that's one thing that I try to do. So the bottom line is having transparent communication with your team members to let them know why the change is coming, because the biggest question is why. In addressing that why question to the best of your abilities, based upon the information that you have, that also increases the credibility of you as a leader in front of your team.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And, definitely, being having the trust between your team and you and listening to their concerns, goes a long way. And often what I will ask my team to do is be open and give it a little bit of time. And then we can circle back to see how things are going. If there are any issues that pop up. So
Right.
thank you for that, Amit. So
Sure.
another thing that happens is there's changes in processes that happen pretty often, right? Every
Yeah.
months or so in some companies, there's something new. And people, again, don't always understand the rationale behind it. And so they don't welcome those changes. And a lot of times that impacts their overall productivity. As a leader,
Right.
how do
Right.
you handle this situation? How do you get the buy in from your team? And how do you bring them along on the journey?
Right. Right. Yeah. Once again, this is also, in fact, in my experience, also I've seen this a quite um, common occurrence. Happens more than you would like to see. But then at times, these are also uh, good changes that happen. I'll just give an example from my experience at Dell. We went from a waterfall development model to an agile Scrum at scale development model. And I have some team members who have been with the company for a long time, and some new team members. So you have to make sure that the rationale behind that change um, is that information is transferred to all of the team members. They and make sure that you get that buy-in from them. So the team members that who were with the team for quite some time, they had seen an iteration of this with Scrum at Safe, and that hadn't panned out very well. So therefore, you can easily see that they had their like reservations about okay, so now yet another iteration of Scrum at scale. So how is that going to be any different than our prior iteration of this, right? So they instantly had that inhibition of accepting this change, right? Um, and then there were some new team members who had seen agile methodologies in their previous companies. Some had positive experience, some not so good. So you as a leader, you need to make sure that you address uh, as to where all of these team members are coming from and address their inhibitions about accepting this change. But first, you need to understand why this change is happening. Okay, so going from waterfall to agile, we know that, okay, like potentially you're trying to reduce the release cadence. Like in our case at Dell, we reduced it from 18 months down to 3 months, also trying to make it a more predictable release. Like you can have your sort of the advantages of going from a waterfall to an agile model, right? But then you also need to make sure that along with all of that, what are the inhibitions that, okay, these set of folks who had seen Scrum at Safe in the past, so what are the nuances or the new changes that you're bringing to the table, making sure that you learned your lessons from the prior iteration, and what are the new changes that you're bringing that potentially will help us reach that sort of that predictable release, that shorter release cadence in a better fashion compared to the previous iteration of Scrum. So by doing that, addressing that, and then making these folks, converting them from naysayers to the sponsors of agile Scrum at scale. And also as since I lead the product management team, I want to make sure that the leaders on my team, they are able to inspire their Scrum teams. So first, making sure that your product leader understands the changes where they're coming from, because only then will they be able to inspire their Scrum teams. Because there might be some engineering folks as well who may not necessarily buy into this change. So how is it that you can bring those guys along to the journey? So sort of the bottom line is make sure that you understand the rationale behind the change, address the questions and the inhibitions that your team members may have, make sure that you all are on the same page. Once again, keep it a open dialogue with your team members, and only then will they be able to go and further inspire their Scrum teams, and then thereby lead to a better productive move from a waterfall model to an agile model. So this was a bit of my experience at Dell, dealing with some changes in processes.
That sounds great. I also had my own experience of driving agile at a previous company, and it was definitely an interesting experience. And a couple of things that worked for us is having regular steering committee meetings.
Right.
So we had an offshore team, and having these steering committee meetings every week kind of showed that this was important. It was coming from the top, and this was something that we really wanted to have happen. But the other thing that we did, we actually had a development leader who was not interested in this whole agile
Mhm.
approach. He was used to the waterfall method,
Right.
and he liked all the details. And what we actually did is we found teams of people that really wanted to try out agile, and so we had like two teams do pilot projects. And so they actually did a pilot, and then they
Oh,
came back
nice.
and they kind of had like a post mortem discussion about
Right.
what worked and what didn't work, and they shared that with the rest of the team.
That's great.
And it convinced them basically that this was the way to go. And so the company is successfully doing agile today.
Right.
So sounds great. I'm actually checking our Q&A right now, and yeah, we have actually only one Q&A. So guys, please keep your Q&A coming. Well, actually, let me ask a couple other questions, Amit, until we get some
Sure.
more questions from the audience.
Sure.
Um, what do you think new leaders struggle with the most as they step into their new role?
Yeah. Sure. I'll talk a little bit about my experience, and then also what I have seen with some of my new product leaders. Yeah, the one thing that I struggled with initially was that I tended to micromanage people quite a bit, like initially. So that's something I had to work on initially. In the sense that yeah, you're working in your domain, let's say as an individual contributor, so you have sort of a certain defined scope and tasks that you're working towards. And then once you get to be a product leader or a people manager, like you have to look across um, multiple individual contributors, their work. So at times I tended to, yeah, make sure that all of the tasks are getting completed by the team members, and making sure that we are making progress. Um, so that's something I tried to do initially. This is quite a few years ago. Yeah, but then what this also created was sort of that slight distrust, if you will, that the team members started thinking that, oh, looks like my manager isn't trusting me that I'm gonna finish my task on time. Um, so it was sort of a bidirectional thing, right? Where sort of trust and credibility were at risk. So then I'm glad that at that time I had a couple of mentors who helped me, saying that like take a step back, trust your team members. Hello,
Yeah, so Amit,
hey guys.
if you continue to focus on your product management role, and when you're in that management position and leader, you're going to miss out on some of the things that you should be doing. So yeah, I mean, talking with mentors and other coaches to help you get there is definitely useful. Okay, so we now have some Q&A
Sophia,
coming in.
are you hearing this background noise from the green room?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
um can you hear my question, Amit?
No, I'm hearing like two sounds. One looks like from the green room, and then from you as well.
At the top, just mute your green room at the top, Amit.
Yeah, it is. It is muted.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
so
Looks like,
I'm going to
yeah.
ask the questions that are coming up to the top.
Sure.
What advice do you wish to have received when you stepped into your first leader role? And this is from Benjamin.
Okay. Hi, Benjamin. Yeah. Let's see. What advice would I have liked? Yeah, like this sort of goes back to the previous question, Sophia, that you asked. Like, I wish somebody had advised me that, okay, as you step into being a people manager or a product leader, sort of uh, make sure that you spend a lot of time in establishing trust and credibility with your team members. So what that means is that try to get to know your team members at a deeper level. Try to understand where they are coming from. And that way, your interactions with them down the road will get easier, smoother, and then like trust is a bidirectional thing. So this will sort of enable you to get the best out of your team members. So the one thing that I work heavily on now is building that comfort zone for my team members and making sure that you identify that optimal frequency, if you will, for somebody to perform at their best. So how is it that you can build that environment for individual team members and also collectively as a team, and then provide that? So that's where your team can truly perform at their best, and then that will result in a better outcome for your team members than just the sum of the individual team members. Yeah, so I wish I had received that sort of an advice right at the beginning when I started my journey as being a people leader.
You touched on this a little bit, Amit, but the question from Danielson asks, how can new team leaders gain the trust of more experienced team members?
Yeah, especially when like as this question states, that if you have a senior team member, and let's say you as the people leader may not have that much experience as the senior member, then it might get a little tricky or dicey to build that credibility and trust, right? So here, at least the approach that I have had in the past is to treat this senior team member as your peer, as your colleague, not necessarily as a um, sort of a manager team member sort of relationship, but that, hey, we collectively as a team, this is our goal, this is our charter, this is what we are marching towards. um, so how is it that you as a senior member of this team, as a leader of this team, can help me achieve those goals, those targets that have been assigned to us or to our team? And for even for you to get to that point, once again, I harp on the fact that you need to establish that credibility, that trust. So for that, you really need to have conversations with this senior team member. Once again, understanding, stepping in their shoes, where they are coming from. Let's say if there was some friction, that if this team member was expecting to be the team leader, but somehow they got overlooked and you were assigned the team member, or you were employed from the outside, you came from the outside into the inside. So you really need to step into their shoes, understand where they are coming from, and only then would you be able to sort of address the challenges uh, or the issues that this person may have, and then see what's a common ground for the both of you to really come together. And once you establish that common ground, maybe it might be challenging to find that common ground, but once you have established that common ground, you can further expand upon that and build a more fruitful relationship that would be beneficial for the both of you, but also for overall for the team as well. And then you could like in the past that I have done is sort of had one of my senior team members also act as a mentor, a coach for some of the junior folks on the team, so that they also feel more valued. And this was of some interest to the senior team member. So that's how I've tried to establish additional responsibilities that would be meaningful for this senior team member, so that I make sure that the senior team member is valued by me and by the team members, and thereby they give their best and be in that zone for their optimal performance.
Thank you, Amit. Okay, the next
Sure.
question is from Alicia, and it's a very interesting one. Do you think some people are not meant to become good leaders, or it's a skill that everyone can develop over time?
Yeah. Yes, I would agree. A very interesting question. And this is once again something that one of my mentors helped me uh, sort of evaluate or do some self discovery about myself. And this can go in a philosophical route as well,
Mhm,
right? So I think the basic question that you need to ask yourself, or at least I feel, at least this is my opinion. Um, let's say if you're evaluating whether you want to be a people manager, a people leader,
mhm,
what is it that you like? For the question that you should ask yourself is, do I like helping people? And if your answer to that is an emphatic yes, then I think that's something that you should definitely explore. Like one thing that I absolutely love is helping people grow in their careers, and that's one of the reasons why I am part of this Plato platform, and along with some of the other leadership platforms as well, because I absolutely enjoy seeing people grow. Sort of this is my way of giving back, because during my early days, there have been a few mentors and coaches who have helped me shape my career. So that's yes. Going back to the question, the one question you need to ask yourself is, do you like helping people? Do you like seeing people grow? And if the answer to that is yes, then you should definitely explore this path. And then you need to have some sort of an approach to go in that direction. That, okay, so what are the skills that I may not have, that maybe I need to develop as I go on that journey to becoming a people leader? Is I need to absolutely have high emotional intelligence. In fact, that's, if anything, you need to take out from this fireside chat, is have high emotional intelligence. Doesn't matter whether you're a people leader or an individual contributor. I think that's of the essence. So work on that. Your communication has to be absolutely great. You need to make sure that at times you may have to convey good things, at times not so good things, but it is always about how you articulate that message, whether it's a difficult message, something that you have to convey to your team member, or for that matter for anybody.
mhm.
Just first step into their shoes, and see as to, if somebody was providing you with that negative feedback, or like whatever it may be, how is it that you would feel, and how you as a leader can sort of change things to make sure that you're still conveying the message, but in a way that doesn't put somebody down or threaten them, and they can take that in a constructive manner. So that's something, is also another thing that you need to learn as you grow into becoming a people leader.
Yeah, and
Does
that's all
that
about
help?
mission. Yeah, excellent. And emotional intelligence is definitely a part of it. And I would just add to it, as a leadership coach, I don't think leaders are either born or, you learn leadership.
Right.
I think you elicit it because it's within each
Exactly.
of us. And
Exactly.
in terms of product management, when I have promoted leaders, I've given them opportunities before I promoted them to actually practice leadership in some smaller areas, so that they can see also, is this something I really enjoy? All
Right.
right, I think we have time for, we have about a minute and a half. One last quick question, hopefully. And this is from Vishal. What advice would you give to an engineer who wants to transition into a product owner leader role? And I think they
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
mean product management role also.
Yeah. Great question, Vishal. Yeah. So this is something that I did quite a few years ago as well. That is transition from engineering into product management. Um, yeah. So the one thing that I would absolutely suggest is, take out your engineer's hat, put it on the side, and then take a product management hat and put it on. So what I mean by that is when you're looking at a product, a feature, a capability, stop thinking about it from an engineering perspective. Start looking at it from a customer's perspective. Because as a product manager or a product leader, uh, you are acting as the advocate for the customer with your company, with
Um,
your cross functional stakeholders that you're working with, whether that's engineering, whether that's support, sales, business folks. You want to make sure that
Amit,
you, as a product manager,
sorry, we're about
sorry,
to go off. So I just want to thank you and invite everyone to join our lounge, and we can have more questions
yeah, we
answered
can
in
continue
the
this question.
post-session Q&A lounge. Thank you, guys.